Hello, and welcome to the second half of the DEI Council presenting the awareness experience in conjunction with human resources here at Mesa Community College. My colleague and I, Chanel Cotter, are really excited to deliver this content that helps MCC be a fantastic place to work. Because as our president, Dr. Bergquam, has said, we are really committed to making sure that we have really great hires here at our college. And important in that is making sure that we include diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging into our hiring practices. So what we're hoping in this point of time is to have you to be able to be more aware of how you enter spaces so we can help to push forward some of our strategic directions. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start off with what is awareness, right? Awareness is this word we just kind of use, like I'm so aware of what's going on. And actually, it's a term that we've been using a lot, increasing awareness, conversations, all these great things. But awareness is really interesting, right? Awareness by itself is the knowledge and the understanding that something is happening or exists. Right. And so for me to have knowledge and understanding, I have to be paying attention to it. Right. So if I don't pay attention to something, then I may not be aware of it. I know growing up, my mother seemed to know everything. I felt like she had eyes in the back of her head, like she could see what I was doing. So if I said, "Oh, I'm just downstairs," she's like, "No, you're not. You're not doing that." And so I think I tell my kids the same thing too. Like I've got eyes in the back of my head, but the truth is, I don't. I am able to see what I'm focused on and what I'm looking at. And so, with awareness, where it's really important is to understand that there's a lot of things outside of your sight line. There are things happening before you. The space that I'm sitting doing this presentation right now is limited in what you're able to see and what I'm able to see. In addition to my home, in addition to the neighborhood, in addition to everything else, I cannot see what's happening in the rest of the world. Doesn't mean that it's not happening, but we need to be able to increase our awareness that things may be happening outside of our viewpoint. So, first, we're going to begin with something that we typically throw around about being self aware. And I know as a counselor, talk a lot about self awareness. But Dr. Tasha Urich, which is a fantastic organizational psychologist, she began to reshape how we saw the phrasing self awareness by breaking it down into different components. The first being the fact that self awareness is actually two parts of something coming together, meaning we have the internal self awareness and the external self awareness. Internal self awareness is how we see ourselves, it's how we see our values, our passions, our aspirations, our fits within our environment. As an organization, MCC has its own values that are committed to making sure that we have integrity, that we are committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, all of these wonderful things. Do our values align with the organization's values? Because the organization is the entity through which we bring our values to the table too. But we also must make sure that we align underneath the organization's values. Because when we walk into spaces, we walk in as MCC. So, if you could for a moment, find out what your values are. Write down 3 to 5 values that you may have. So, for some people, that may be integrity, that may be compassion, that may be empathy, that may be learning. Whatever that may be for you, write those down. But at the same time, I want you to take some moments to explore what the mission, vision, and values are for our college and see how you're able to integrate your values within our system. And those two things together can help bring forth an experience that's great, not only for the students, but for your colleagues here at the college. Secondly, we have external self-awareness, and that's the awareness that we have that how others experience us, how they see our values, how they see our passions and our aspirations. So it's one thing to say, "Hey, I value patience." But then if you get behind me on a road and you see me driving crazy and I'm honking, you may say, I don't think you value patience as much. And so, are we doing the work that we're talking about? And so you got to be able to balance the two. The internal, which is how you see yourself, and the external is how others see you. My question to you is how often do you invite others viewpoints of you to the table? Do they feel safe engaging with you and saying, hey, listen, maybe this value doesn't align with what you say, or maybe this passion doesn't align with what you say, or how about this? It does. It's a balance between the two. In addition to that, Dr. Urich also talked about how there are also experiences and powers and how it hinders self awareness. A lot of times, if we're in a position for a long time, we assume that we are self aware. We count experience as automatic self awareness, and that may not be the case. Experience is something that we're going through, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the experience of somebody else too. So it's important to note that experience does not automatically associate self awareness, and it could actually hinder your self awareness because you can be very robotic in how we approach things. I know if you've ever driven anywhere and you've driven to the same location a bunch of times, I can promise you there's one time that you probably drove or you were in the car and you weren't really paying attention to the road and you wonder, how did I get there? I don't remember focusing. I don't remember paying attention because you were on this kind of autopilot trip, right? And I've done it tons of times. So that means my experience in driving this route has become so programmatic for me, right? Where I am not even paying attention to the things that are around me, the awareness of things. So it's important to note that. Also, power dynamics. Power play a huge role in how we see our self awareness because sometimes we don't understand that when we walk into spaces, people add value to us because of who we are. And so that power position can kind of limit how people experience you. So you may be powerful in this space, but maybe at home it may not be the same. So power can limit self awareness. Third, but not least, she talks about introspection and how it doesn't always automatically lead to self awareness. So, just because you know a lot about yourself, as she talked about earlier, that external self awareness is really important because learning about yourself is only one dimension. Knowing both and being able to balance both sides of this equation are really important. And in some spaces, you may do it really well. You may be high in internal, low in external. In other places, you may be high in external and low in internal, or you may be balanced in all of these spaces. Wherever you fall, the important part of it is that you know that it exists and how it presents itself and how it shows up in the workplace. Next thing we're going to talk about is biases. I know you guys have heard a lot about this word. You've heard this term a lot. And a lot of times it's really hard to see our own biases. If you took the test beforehand, the IAT, then you'd be able to see that maybe these things do exist. But if you haven't taken it, I strongly encourage you to do so. But let's just see how biased you are. If you have a phone in front of you, I want you to be able to pull it out. And on this phone, you should be able to see your frequent contacts or your favorite contacts. And if you scroll through, you'll look through and you'll probably find, maybe outside of work, that you talk to maybe the same 5 to 10 people. That's the group that you get your information from. These are the individuals you share your life with. And so these individuals are helping to create the bias because they're either affirming or not affirming what you believe, but it's not bringing in different viewpoints. Or if you take a look at your social media accounts, these algorithms are built to help to give you more of, what you like, to show the people that you typically visit. Or you go to the store, there's a brand of something that you consistently buy. These are our biases, these are our preferences. It's not automatically rooted in something that's negative, but it's something we naturally do. And the way that we pay attention to it really shapes how we approach other spaces. So now I'm going to toss it off to Chanel, and she's going to go more in depth about biases and how they present themselves, not only personally, but also in the workplace and especially in hiring and search committees. So go ahead, Chanel. Go ahead, take it out.